guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back for episode 2 of the Dolly's podcast.
We just wanted to start by saying thank you for all the great comments and all the love you gave us for episode 1. We know we had some teething problems. We're working really hard to figure those out. It was our first time.
But we are very, very appreciative of everybody who gave us a listen and everybody who let us know that they enjoyed it. I mean, we appreciate everybody very much.
So many places around the world. There even places that we have no friends or connections or ties to were listening. And it was really nice. It was really nice. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And also, thank you so much to our friend Claire for hooking us up with the darling new jingle that you guys just heard at the beginning of the podcast.
Isn't it so
sweet.
good?
It was so sweet.
it.
I adore it, and it's an earworm for sure.
It really is. I have been playing it in the shower. I've been playing it when I'm doing the dishes, while I'm folding laundry. It's on repeat. So I hope it becomes as much of an earworm for everyone listening as it does, as it has for us.
We hope it gets stuck in your heads.
And you will never forget us, ever.
So I'm very excited about this episode, and I know you're excited about this episode.
I'm so excited.
This is right in your wheelhouse, Winnie.
Yes, completely
So-
up my alley. It's the brainworm of my life, I would say.
So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what our topic is today?
Today we're going to be talking about Hollywood during World War II, which I think is a really interesting take on the war. A lot of the stars and actors and entertainers, a lot of them did not enlist, but they put forward their time and they volunteered themselves for the war effort in a lot of different ways. And I'm really excited for you guys to learn something new. Even through research, again, I found out new things, and this has been something that I've loved for years and years. So this is very exciting.
You're the old Hollywood buff out of the two of us.
I'm also showing you the good stuff.
You're showing me a lot of the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
I've been getting quite the education on a lot of old Hollywood movies.
Particularly too that we're going to be talking about. I've only watched Stage Door Canteen once. I've watched Hollywood Canteen a couple times, and I love both of them dearly. How did you enjoy them?
I saw them both. I watched each one once, and I think I liked them both very much, but I think I loved Hollywood Canteen a little bit more.
Yes, I feel the same.
I just found like it was a bit more authentic. Not that Stage Door Canteen wasn't, but Hollywood Canteen felt less scripted to me.
Yes. And the thing with Stage Door Canteen is that because a lot of the stars within it were more Broadway stars than Hollywood stars, they were less recognizable. Therefore, I personally feel like I have less of a rapport with them. I don't know them. Therefore, I'm not as invested.
That makes sense.
The moment I see the Andrews sisters in Hollywood Canteen, I'm sat listening. And there's another song that got stuck in my head. There's another one. Corns for My Country. Yes, so good.
She can really belt it out. I mean, I love the Andrews sisters. You really can't go wrong with any of them. But they are probably one of my favorite old time big band singers. It's the Andrews sisters.
I also love that both of the movies were based off of the real canteens during the time. So obviously we're talking about World War II in this instance, and they helped service a lot of servicemen, gave them, a place to be entertained and a place to be fed, even like during holidays and things like that. So,
and they never took any money from a serviceman. So that was one of the things I loved. Your ticket and your entrance into either of the canteens was your uniform. It was the uniform on your back. That was your ticket in.
Yes. And even the entertainers that volunteered, they didn't necessarily have to entertain the audience of service members. They could be dishwashers, they could be waiters, they could be soda jerks. And if they did not want to volunteer to work, they were required to pay the $50 to sit with the service members, which I think is completely fair. I mean,
No,
if you're not going to
absolutely.
work,
It's
I
not going to
feel like
work.
that was, yeah, I feel like that was rare that
I don't
people
think,
just paid to
yeah,
sit.
no.
People just paid to
And I know
sit.
that there were a lot of female stars in Hollywood, and you see it in both the films. So if anybody watches both the films, either of the films, you'll see it. They sit, and sometimes their job was to sit with a soldier and let him talk and listen,
Yes.
which seems to be, if we go back to what we were talking about in our first episode, how the Red Cross girls would sit and talk with servicemen who were, overseas. This is what Hollywood starlets were doing in America.
Yes.
So they were doing the job just a little differently in the States. And I like that each canteen was on each coast. So the Hollywood canteen was
Yep.
appropriately in Hollywood, and Stage Door canteen was in the theater district in New York.
I'm not sure if any of the others were named specifically, depending on where they were, but it spurred like 3 or 4 more. There was one in
Did
Washington, D.C. There was a couple in Europe, one in England and one in Paris. And I think even Indiana, something like that. But yeah, they spurred even more in smaller locations.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So all of them were entertained.
The Hollywood canteen was founded by Betty Davis and John Garfield in 1942.
Yeah, they operated between 1942 and 1945.
And that was both canteens, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, they were both founded in 1942, but I believe Stage Door Canteen closed first. No specific year given on that one, but Hollywood Canteen ran from 1942 until Thanksgiving Day in 1945.
And by that point, Thanksgiving Day of 1945, we were past VE Day. A lot of people were on their way home at that point. So it makes sense that would be when the canteen decided to start closing its doors.
Yes. Obviously, there were less and less service members to entertain, to feed. A lot of them had actually gone home by that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that it was a union. Like, it was operated via a union, the way that most things in Hollywood are. So it had 42, right? 42 union sponsors.
42 guild union sponsored it, but the biggest one was the Screen Actors Guild. And at the time, that was chaired by James Cagney. So he loved it. He obviously volunteered his time. And they also helped elect a board of governors, essentially a board of directors.
That was Bob Hope, Betty Davis, and John Garfield.
Yes. Betty Davis was the president and John Garfield was the vice president. But it was actually John Garfield who went to Davis with the idea of Hollywood Canteen because he visited the Stage Door Canteen, which had opened first.
I love that they were open 7 days a week too. There was no days off.
Yes.
And they operated, pretty decent hours, Monday through Saturday, 7 p.m. to midnight, and Sundays from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's on a Sunday, you wouldn't think a lot of places like that would be open on a Sunday, but
no, not at all. By the end of 1942, it had grown so much in popularity that the vice president of the canteen, Garfield, noted that they were serving 5,000 service members each night on weekends and 20,000 throughout the week.
That's incredible.
Which is such a large number.
10,000 every weekend, 20,000 throughout the week.
Yeah.
That in and of itself should just be an indication to just how many men were enlisted in the service.
Yeah. They were they were busy as well. There was a new show every hour and a half, and they operated like the people coming in on like a turnstile type deal where they would have an hour and a half, and then once the next show started, another set of servicemen.
So they would bring them in waves so that everybody got a chance to see the show.
Yeah. So they got a good hour and a half.
That's awesome.
They could, hang out, smoke. There was no alcohol served at either club. however.
Yes, that I
They
remember,
didn't serve alcohol,
but they fed them.
but they fed them all. Yep.
They had a whole literal canteen area. Like, they didn't just
Mhm.
call it the canteen for argument's sake. They had a whole canteen area. They would serve them full meals,
Yep.
desserts,
Mhm.
fruits. I think that they really, for taking no salary,
Yeah.
really, really went above.
They really went above and beyond.
It really just goes to
Um,
show how people just came together during the war. I mean,
yes.
they
Given
didn't
what you'd
even
least
they didn't
expect.
even hesitate. Nobody they it was not even like a split second hesitation.
Nope.
You could tell that everybody wanted to do their part, and they would do whatever they had to do it.
And a lot of them would even go back multiple times to volunteer their time. They wouldn't just do it the once. They would go back throughout the years, especially during the 1 millionth service member to visit the Hollywood canteen.
I love that.
His name was Sergeant Cowbell, and he was a Purple Heart recipient. He was a 1 millionth service member to visit, and they made a big show of it. And he received kisses from Marlene Dietrich, Bessie Grable, Lana Turner, and Deanna Durbin. He must have been having the time of his life.
He had to have been, and I love that part of the canteen was that part of the movie. So Hollywood Canteens film,
Yes.
they did show that in the film. They showed
Yes, it's so
the
sweet.
serviceman. I remember his name was Slim.
Yeah.
It's his nickname, Slim.
Uh-huh.
And he had gone back to the canteen a couple of times, and he happened to be their 1 millionth service member. And they made it was
It's
a
a
whole
very
thing to
sweet
do for
thing.
him in the film. And I thought, oh, this was before I knew that the Hollywood Canteen film was more authentic, less scripted.
Yes, it's more documentary with cameos. Well, very well
Yeah.
rehearsed cameos.
Very well organized cameos.
Very well.
But cameos regardless.
Yes, they were all asked to be in it. They all agreed. They all volunteered their time. Warner Brothers donated 40% of the profits from both movies to the canteens themselves. And
That's
during the war,
amazing.
stars would even donate their salaries.
40% during that time was a lot of money.
Yeah. Speaking of
For
a lot of
people.
money, a lot of them were in cameo roles in Thank Your Lucky Stars. That came out in 43. And each entertainer was paid $50,000 by the studio. And they donated it to both canteens.
That's amazing.
50,000 back then.
50,000 back then was a lot of money. I mean, you could put it in perspective that 50,000 now for certain people
is
be considered a lot of money. But back then, 50,000 was off the charts. 50,000 was a lot of money back then. Yeah. So to get all of that donated to the canteens that's a pretty payday for them.
Yeah,
to keep them operational, for sure.
So many people volunteered. Obviously, the Andrews sisters, who we mentioned, Bing Crosby, Catherine Hepburn volunteered her time.
Recording this on the heels of Christmas, I'm going to say I love Bing Crosby. I think I've watched White Christmas probably 5 or 6 times at this point, but he might be one of my favorites.
You're not going to believe that I only watched that movie a couple of years ago for the first time.
You?
Yeah. I never watched it. I watched it in 22 for the first time. And I fell in love with it completely. And I watch it throughout the year, actually. If I can find it on the streaming service and it's free.
Guilty. I do it too.
I'll belt feed it until they take it away from me. I'll eat it.
I love it.
I'll just take it. But yes,
the list of stars is just.
Yeah. Cab Calloway, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald. And one really great thing about both canteens is that they committed integrated socialization.
Yes.
If segregation was occurring elsewhere.
So ahead of the times.
Yeah, very much. Very much.
In the 40s. Very much ahead of the times.
Yeah.
But then somehow integrated at the canteens, integrated service.
Yeah.
But yet not
places segregated.
Segregated service in the war. So segregated, pilots, women who served,
Mm-hmm.
And then after the war, it was like everybody forgot about
Yeah, and it was
the
essentially back to
integration, and then it was
business.
like 10 steps back.
Yeah, which is really frustrating.
And just it's like, oh yeah, well let's do this because there's a war on and we should all sing, I guess we should all sing Kumbaya.
You saw it.
But okay, war's over. Let's go back to putting the dividers up again.
Which is something I know we're really excited to discuss later on in the pod when we watch 688.
Oh yes.
When we talk about
Yes.
that.
Absolutely.
But not only were these stars, volunteering their time at home, they were also doing war bond tours, USO tours. So going out on the front lines and entertaining the troops.
Marlene Dietrich was the top earner, right? For
She
USO.
was. She
was
was
the top earner of USO selling war bonds for the USO tours.
Yes. And she even performed on the front lines in Germany. She was kilometers away. And when they asked her why she did it, she said out of decency.
God bless her.
Yeah. She performed in Algeria, Italy, and France. And she was with General Patton when she went to Germany.
She was also the first USO entertainer to perform in France.
Yep.
Not even a month after DJ.
Yes. Is it Band of Brothers where Harry says,
oh yes.
Is that the one? Yeah.
Oh yeah. 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 Harry Welsh has a small crush on Marlene Dietrich.
Well, that's it. I'm going. I'm going to France.
He does.
A whole lot of them performed for the USO. They had different troops throughout the whole thing. They had different groups. They were split into 4 circuits. So there was Victory and Blue, who entertained stateside service members. There was the hospital circuit, and they entertained the wounded soldiers in hospital. And there was Foxhole, who went overseas, and Dietrich was a part of that one.
Bob Hope went overseas a lot too, though. I was watching something.
He did, yeah.
I was actually watching some yesterday. I found it. I was skimming through on my TV, and there was a special. It was like a reunion special. It had to be filmed in the 80s.
Yeah.
Bob Hope and one of the Andrews sisters gave a testimonial, and I think they showed a lot of G.I. Jane, and they basically were talking about who pulled their weight and who did the USO tours. And there was a lot of clips of Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Lucille Ball, and to my surprise, Mel Blanc. So if anybody here, if any of our listeners are Looney Tunes fans,
yeah, he went along with it.
Bugs Bunny went on USO tours as well.
And I'm sure they all found that hilarious.
They used them a lot. They used him a lot, rather, on radio shows.
Okay.
So he would interact with, I believe he did the voice for, it was Private Snafu. Yeah. And he was the cartoon. Private Snafu was the kind of down on his luck, cartoon. And then Mel Blanc would do the voice for him, and they would do the radio shows of Private Snafu and get the voices of Lucille Ball and Bing Crosby.
And get all them in.
They would read all kind of like a radio. Literally, that's what it was, a radio show. Yeah. There was no TV. So the way we would sit down and watch cartoons, it was them just reading the script of a cartoon.
Yeah.
Out loud.
Which is very sweet.
Very sweet.
Not only were they, on tour entertaining, a lot of stars would stay home and do war bond tours, encouraging people to buy war bonds
at home.
Yeah. And it was shortly after Pearl Harbor that Roosevelt approached Hollywood's most influential figures and asked them to be involved in the war effort, whether it be selling war bonds or even enlisting, which a few stars did.
No, definitely. There was a few stars. I mean, I think if you were to go right off the cuff, most notable, I'd say Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Jimmy Stewart. Clark Gable, but Clark Gable didn't enlist until So Clark Gable enlisted after the death of his wife.
Yes, who was on a war bond tour.
Yes, Carol Lombard.
Yeah, Carol Lombard, yeah.
She was the first woman to die for her country in the war.
Mhm.
And she unfortunately died at home in America.
Yeah. She was coming back from her hometown in Indiana. She was so keen to get home that she wanted to fly home. And then her mother and Clark Gable's press agent stuck with the original travel plan and took the train. But Lombard decided to fly because she wanted to get home. Crashed in the Vegas mountains.
There
Yeah.
was a fear of Japanese planes coming into America.
Yep.
So what happened was airfields would turn off the lights
They
at
would
night.
turn the lights off at night.
They would
and
turn the
then-
lights off at night, and her pilot couldn't navigate over the mountains in Nevada,
Yes.
and they crashed.
It was really, it obviously rocked Gable's world, and he ended up enlisting himself.
She had asked him to enlist prior to her death.
Yes.
I remember reading that. She had asked him to enlist prior to her death.
Yeah.
And he said, no, no, no. And then when she died, he spiraled, which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
She was so young. She was 33.
That's no age. She was very young.
Very, very young.
Yeah.
And then he enlisted. And he enlisted in the Air Force alongside Jimmy Stewart. And he ran a division with B-17s in England, where he would go up and make films of
Yes.
B-17s in flight.
Which none of them I have ever seen. I'm sure there's a whole bunch on YouTube that we
I'm
could
sure if we were really
find and
to
watch.
dig and look, we would find
Yeah.
some of
find
his films.
I know that Jimmy Stewart really loved his time as well in the Air Force. He was a pilot, I believe.
He was a pilot, I believe. Yes, he was a pilot. I've seen propaganda videos of Jimmy Stewart in his uniform and his leather jacket with his Crusher cap on, and it's
So handsome.
how handsome.
That's always the thing with
They don't
these
make men like that anymore. They don't.
No, they don't. But Clark Gable was the first chairman of the war bond project, and he was the one that was encouraging fellow entertainers and stars to enlist. But then once he departed overseas to England, it was then chaired by James Cagney. Again, he's taking all the jobs.
Cagney. The man
Screen
is everywhere. The
skills.
man is everywhere.
And that, my goodness. Hattie McDaniel was also a part of it, of the
Yes,
Hollywood.
I was just going to say, I think it's important that we note that Hattie McDaniel was the chair of the Negro division of
the Negro division, yeah.
of the HVC, and
They never went overseas.
no, they
would
provided
entertain-
entertainment to troops that were in American hospitals.
yeah, those that were wounded. And they just, obviously, while doing that, encouraged civilians to buy war bonds, to the point that Rita Hayworth, she donated the front and back bumpers of her car.
That's I would
Which-
assume it's because back then the front and back bumpers of a car were metal, like
Yes,
kind of metal you would want to
Exactly,
donate as scrap metal.
yes.
Because when I first read that, I was like, the front.
Why would she do
I'm-
that?
In my head, the image was just not there for a second, and then I had to remember that cars were just built different.
They were built differently back then.
They were built differently back then.
And this prompted others to give what they
To
could.
donate the front and back bumpers of their car too.
So you don't need to be doing all of this, but if you can, you should
Yeah.
join me. It's just crazy.
If you can donate just the front, that's fine, but we would prefer the front and back.
You prefer the front and the back, but don't strain yourself. Completely. But it just shows again how much they were willing to, even though a lot of them could not enlist or chose not to enlist, it shows how much they were willing to give to help win the war.
It does. It does. And I think I mentioned before that Hattie McDaniels was the chair of the HVC. I did not actually state what the HVC was.
Hollywood Victory Committee.
The Hollywood Victory Committee. And it's estimated that within the nearly 4 years that the Hollywood Victory Committee was running, they held over 56,000 free appearances and
Yep.
almost 7,700 events.
Yeah.
And that's including the 120 overseas tours.
Mhm. I would really love to talk about the circuits I mentioned, especially
Oh,
foot.
yeah.
They lived essentially the same lives as the troops that they were
Yeah.
entertaining. They would wear uniforms, they would sleep in the same conditions, they would eat the same food, and they would travel to Europe, Russia, Central Africa, Alaska, the South Pacific, and the Middle East. Bob Hope was one of the first people to volunteer to entertain overseas troops.
Yes. They showed a lot of clips of him overseas in that documentary I was watching.
Yeah,
He's wearing it's the military fatigues. It's like the khaki colored pants and shirt,
yeah.
but there's no indication of like there's no uniform decorations on it. So there's
Mhm.
no
It's a
stripes, no
blank.
medals. It's just
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah.
And there was clips of him and off the cuff, I can't remember her name.
Is it Dinah Shaw? I feel like it's Dinah 'cause she was with Bob doing the tour, but they were the first ones to get there.
It could be. They were in, from what I remember, they were in the South Pacific and the conditions were so wet and just not conducive to living that
Yeah.
him and that Bob Hope and might have been Dinah Shore, they developed fungus. Like I
Oh,
remember,
yeah, that was Dinah Shaw.
yes, that was Dinah Shore. I remember him saying that they developed, he had it on his feet.
Oh my god.
She had it in her ears.
Ah,
And they were at
my
the very
god.
end of the USO tour in the South
Mhm.
Pacific. And they were both at the point where they were like, we have done our job. At this point, we're not feeling our best. I think it's time to go home.
Yeah.
They were approached to go down and visit the troops in Australia
Jeez.
because nobody in Australia ever got a visit from a USO tour. And the troops down there, morale was low and they wanted to see the stars. And
Yeah.
Bob Hope and Dinah Shore, like, no, how do we go? And he said that the gentleman who approached him asking them to go down to Australia looked like his world was falling apart. And they made the decision to just extend for a brief
Yeah.
time, go down,
Mhm.
and then go home.
Which again shows how much they, even though they weren't enlisted themselves, how much they were also willing to sacrifice. They must have been so tired.
Oh, dead on their feet is
Again, not
how
being
I can
home.
picture it.
Yeah.
I think we would be remiss also if we didn't talk about the pinup girls. So
Yes.
if you were a
Absolutely.
serviceman in the war, you could write to you would write to the studio essentially.
Mhm.
You would request a photo of your favorite actress, and
Which I find so
she would
cute.
send. Listen, and I think this is adorable. I don't think this is. Some people might say, "Oh, it's objectification." I don't think so.
No,
Not
okay.
in this scenario.
No, I don't think so.
They wanted to literally they would send them back and the men would pin them up in their bunks in
Mhm.
their tents and you'd have Rita Hayworth on your wall or you'd have Betty Davis or Gene Tierney. You would and
I've got
they
the
would
cookies.
just and that was where the term pinup girl came
Where
from.
that came from. Didn't a lot of them even start putting them on the noses of aircraft?
Yeah, a
Would
lot of
keep
guys
them nose hard,
would start painting pinup girls on the noses of their aircrafts.
which I
Of
love. I love all of those. They always look so, so good.
I just think that it's a sign of the times. It's a testament to
It really is.
also a testament to how people behaved.
Yeah.
It wasn't objectification. It was strictly
No,
morale.
it was just for fun.
It was. It was
Having a
just for
fun
fun.
time.
It was, hey, these men are over there dying and giving their lives and losing their limbs, and
Yeah.
we're gonna. You want to stare at my face? You can stare at my face.
Go
It's
ahead,
fine.
stare at my face.
Go ahead, stare at my face.
by VE Day for the USO, they were putting on 700 shows a day all around the world.
My God.
And by the end of the war, they had sent over 7,300 entertainers overseas to perform for troops. And that equaled to like 130 million service members in the end.
Wow.
420,000 performances. And the one they would always go, there was a bunch of performers. There was Lena Horne, Judy Garland, Bing Crosby again. But the one apparently that they would go the most wild for was the Andrews Sisters. And that's why I feel like they're the most situated with World War II. They're like the epitome of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
I would say. They were at the height of their success at the time. And on top of that, they did 2 movies during the war. I believe it was Private Buckaroo, but they were in Private Buckaroo. That was their movie.
Which is great. And that's the one where they sing Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, right?
Yes, Private Buckaroo is that one. Which was, again, so good. During the war, they entertained the service members. They went to Africa, Italy. They went to US bases. And they encouraged people to buy war bonds again. And they had a song called Any Bonds Today, which is a really good song. It's not one of their most well-known, but it was one that they essentially used as propaganda.
I loved that when they were out on tour, they would treat 3 random servicemen to dinner.
They would,
wherever
yes.
they were eating.
3 random service members. I feel like they'd have a great time just picking out the chosen 3. Like, wait, this one, no, this one.
Which I think is so adorable, too. Just like, no pretense, just...
No.
Hey, there's 3 of us. There's 3 of them. Pick up the bill.
There was a reason that they were dubbed the sweethearts of the armed forces during the war. Because they just were.
They were. They also recorded those victory discs.
Yes, and they were distributed to Allied forces only. And they volunteered their time. Again, they didn't get paid for it.
No, they didn't. There was a whole piece of that and them recording the victory discs in the Bob Hope special as well.
Oh, do you see it, or is it just mentioned?
No, you see it.
Oh, that's amazing.
You see it, which is really cool. I mean, I was in preparation for this episode. I said, "Oh, I've watched Hollywood Canteen. I've watched Stagecoach Canteen. Let's see what else is out there.
What else is knocking around?"
And I will say, I rented it on the Fire Stick, and it was the best $1.99 I spent all weekend.
Some of them are so. Some of the movies and the documentaries that came out of the time are so good, particularly the ones I feel like about the stars of Hollywood.
Oh yeah,
because even though a lot of them could not enlist, a lot of them, still wanted to help in any way they could. I would love it if we could talk about Hedy Lamarr.
Oh yes.
Because she wanted to join the National Inventors Council around the time of the war, but she was told that she would better help the war effort by using her starlet status to sell war bonds. And they put her with a sailor. His name was Eddie Rhodes. And they had a little playful time together where she would pretend that she didn't know Rhodes. And she would, quote unquote, pick him out from the audience. Which I find this so funny. She would briefly flirt with him. She'd pick him out of the crowd, bring him on the stage, flirt with him in front of the audience, and ask the audience if she should give him a kiss in front of them.
She was very calculated, but good.
Oh, yeah. This is fun.
Yeah. And she would say, should I give him a kiss? And well, all right, well, if enough of you buy war bonds,
then yeah, I'll give him a kiss.
I'll give him a kiss.
And then after enough bonds were purchased, she would kiss him. He would go back to the audience under this pretense that he's just some guy. And then
they do it all again the next day.
And they do it all again the next day, which I find so funny. Eventually, for her work being an inventor. She was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014 for their frequency hopping communication system, which was a big help during the war.
So she was, some would say, beauty and brains.
Beauty and brains. She's the reason we have Bluetooth.
Is she really?
That's what that is. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It came from that idea, the frequency hopping, and then that became what we know today as Bluetooth.
And so when my AirPods don't connect to my phone, I know who to blame.
Yeah, blame the prettiest woman in Hollywood.
Oh my gosh,
Think of her with all those,
so cool.
think of her with all those beautiful stars on her head in that headband, and then be like, great, it's because of you. How can I blame you with face like that?
Right?
But there were so many women that volunteered. Marlene Dietrich, who we have mentioned. Marilyn Monroe, she went on honeymoon to Japan with her husband. And she went to South Korea to perform while that war was ongoing in 1954. Dinah Shore, who we have spoken about. Joan Crawford was a very big part of the war too. She was the first USO Woman of the Year. And she was so involved that when she died in 1977, the USO was one of the beneficiaries of her will. So she put them in her will and donated some of her estate to the USO.
That's amazing. I also love that not replaced, but Carol Lombard was scheduled to begin filming a movie prior to her death that obviously she never got to film. And Joan Crawford basically replaced her in the film. And she donated all of her proceeds from the film to the American Red Cross because the American Red Cross was responsible for locating and bringing home the bodies of those who died in the plane crash with Carol Lombard. And I just think that that's a testament to how selfless Joan Crawford really was.
She really was. And that's why I personally don't understand all the drama surrounding her. She was a nice woman. No one who's mean does anything like that.
No, that's the thing. Nobody who's mean just donates their salary.
But we don't need to get into the drama of Davis and Crawford because we will be here for hours with my harebrained theories.
We're not here for the drama.
Wish we were. No, I'm kidding.
I think it would be important and also maybe a little self-indulgent to talk about two women from Hollywood who both served in the war. And maybe this is me as a Golden Girls fan just wanting to talk about Betty White and Bea Arthur for a second. But they both served in the war in different capacities.
They did, which I didn't know because I don't watch the Golden Girls, and I should probably get on that.
We could do a whole episode about how I'm going to force you to watch the Golden. I'm kidding. We could talk for an hour about how I could lobby for you to say you should watch it. It was good.
Definitely watch.
Especially because Betty White and Bob Hope were such good friends.
The episode synopsis of one of them is that Rose is convinced that Bob Hope is her real father.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious. I love that. Yes. What was their connection was?
I believe her husband, Al Ludden, was their connection. And he was the host of the game show Password from 1971 to 75. And Betty White was like the queen of Password in the 70s.
I've never seen that either. We didn't have that in England. We didn't have Password.
Well, Password went off the air for a while. And then back, I don't know who hosts it now. I forget. It might be on, it might not. I don't know.
Is it one of those where you would be home from school because you're sick?
No, that was The Price is Right. So Betty White served in World War II. She was a member of the American Women's Voluntary Services, so the AWVS. And she joined in 1941. She was 19 years old and put her acting career on hold to join. And she drove a PX truck, which is a post-exchange truck, to deliver supplies to troops in temporary camps in California. And she also attended dances for departing troops at night. So men that were on their way overseas, she would attend these dances.
I love that.
So there's a quote here from her where she describes her experience in the war. And she describes it as a strange time and out of balance with everything, which I think would sum up the war pretty efficiently.
Oh, I completely agree, especially
Um,
after putting your life on hold.
and that she met some nice boys at the dances. That sounds like something my grandmother would say. He was a nice boy.
Oh, it was a nice
She met some nice boys at the dances, and she corresponded with several of them after they were shipped out.
That's really sweet. But see, again, women, you know, just sitting and listening to servicemen. Something a constant theme here.
I was just gonna say, I'm sensing a theme, an unintentional theme on our part, but I'm sensing it.
B. Arthur was also enlisted, and she was one of the first members of the United States Marine Corps Women's Reserve.
Really?
She enlisted in 43, and she served as a typist at HQ in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
But by June of 43, she requested a transfer to the Motor Transport School in North Carolina. She then worked as a truck driver and dispatcher in Cherry Point, North Carolina. And then she was honorably discharged at the rank of Staff Sergeant in September of 1945. So while she spent her time at home during the war, she still served, which I think is still a very, I wouldn't say it was a dangerous job, but it was something, again, that she didn't have to. It
was noble.
was noble, yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. Noble. She chose to.
It was noble. And I just saw the Smithsonian is in possession of Betty White's shoulder bag from her uniform.
Oh, that's amazing.
They call it a time capsule of World War II. And it says that both the interior and exterior of Betty White's shoulder bag chronicle her experiences during World War II. Like many others, White collected badges and souvenirs from the people she met during her time in service. So the bag it looks like it was the standard issue shoulder bag. And then it's got on the outside, the exterior, just pins, just U.S. Army pins. There's oak leaves. There are captain's bars, lieutenant's bars, a lot of collar tab pins and insignias. Yeah. I just think that that's so cool.
That's amazing.
And now the Smithsonian has it.
It's one of those things that you don't think that would be kept.
Or in good condition. I mean, the photos of it are the photos of it look like they're in excellent condition.
Oh, yeah.
They also have her uniform.
Do they?
Yes. So it's her bag and her uniform on display at the Smithsonian.
I think we may need to put a little picture of that on our Instagram. So
I thought you were going to say we need a field trip.
I mean, that
we
too.
should do that too.
Absolutely, that too. I've always wanted to go to the Smithsonian.
There's a lot in DC that we could
we need to see.
There's a lot in DC, yeah, that would benefit us.
I completely agree. I do agree. But yeah, we'll make sure to put a picture of that up.
Make sure to get that up on our page
for everyone
as well. We everything that we find that corresponds with these episodes, and even not with these episodes, we're very happy to share. So if there's something that our followers want to see or want us to try to dig up, if you have any suggestions too for topics you'd like us to talk about, send us a message.
Drop us a line.
Drop us a line on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Send us a message and let us know if there's something that you guys would like to hear us talk about.
I know
we're open to suggestions.
I know that next time we're really excited to talk about the 688 that just released on Netflix.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to watching that. It's going to be something I'd take care of over Christmas break for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll be watching it.
Me too.
And we don't want to give away all our secrets.
That's true, but just that
all our topics coming up.
I'm excited for that one.
Just that next one. Yeah.
I think everyone else should be excited for it.
No, absolutely.
It's been a long time coming.
I think it's something that should have been put out and talked about a long time ago.
A long time ago. But I'm glad the story's being told now. And we're really excited to share
our thoughts
with it. And on that note, thank you again for listening.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
we hope you have a happy holidays, whatever
Yes.
it is you're celebrating.
Yes, by the time this comes out, it'll be after Christmas, but we do hope that everybody enjoyed their holidays, had a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate,
Yeah.
and however it is you choose to celebrate it. We hope it was with friends and family and people that you care about. And a Happy New Year to all of you.
Yes.
We're looking forward to what 2025 has in store for not just the podcast, but all of our friends and
But
followers
yes,
and
all of
family.
us. Thank you for listening again.
Yes. Thanks for coming back and listening.
Bye.
And we'll see you guys next time.